Welcome to Escaping the Echo Chamber. Today I want to talk about destroying the proletariat. That's one of my goals. It's something that it's a theme that runs throughout my policies, the policies I support, the support policies I advocate for, and the policies I create. But let me just first provide some background, basically on what I mean. First of all, if you just take a look around, you realize that a lot of people are suffering. People are working their fingers to the bone. They're not getting paid a lot to do it. They're not able to take care of health care costs, housing costs, be it rent or mortgage, and most of the times it's rent, health care, housing. People are feeding their families, kind of. Some of them, a lot of people do need additional support to take care of that as well. You know, you've got people who are getting, food stamp assistance, SNAP assistance. But it seems to be getting worse. There's just this large pool of people, that the pool of people is growing and they're falling further behind. Meanwhile, you have a much smaller pool of people who are just amassing more and more resources. And it's led to people to say, hey, how come they have so much? You know, this is not right. We need to adjust this. We need to fix this, so that those people at the top aren't getting so much, and the rest of us don't have so little. There's actually a really good quote on that I'm going to get to later. But then let me define what the proletariat is. So the proletariat is the class of people that, in layman's terms, are so poor they don't. They have to sell their labor in order to live. So I added the so poor part, but even according to the definition that's in the Webster's or something, I forgot the exact dictionary I got it from, but it defines the proletariat as being a class of people that needs to sell their labor in order to survive. So they don't own the means of production. And that's why you have this large group of the working class that has to work constantly, week in, week out, paycheck to paycheck. They're just like, as soon as the money hits their hands, it's getting spent on bills, and now they have to work to stay afloat. They got to get the next week's check, because it's just as quick as it's coming in, it's going out. So what do I mean destroy the proletariat? Do I mean like hurt these people, destroy these people? No, I mean destroy the class. And there are people who will take that to mean, oh, that's ridiculous. Everybody can't be rich, And it's interesting that the same people who will say that are suggesting that it's not a zero-sum game, who also engage in this same, okay, well, we need to take from them in order to provide for us and even out the playing field. The rich shouldn't be so rich in order to level the playing field. Those same people are the same people who will say that, who will mischaracterize what I'm saying. That's just saying everybody can't be rich. So they will, in one instance, admit or posit that it is a zero-sum game, and that there's a finite amount of resources that must be shared. And then the other hand say, oh no, it's not. Everybody can survive, and it doesn't have to be the haves and the have-nots. But when I talk about this class, I don't mean that every single person will own their own means of production. Although it would be great if that happened. I don't believe we will get to that point, and there's several reasons. But I believe that we can create a society, an economic system, where the ability exists for people to participate at the highest levels. So in other words, our current system, it it claims to be fair, it claims to be open, claims, you say, oh, in America, anybody can become anything. And with hard work and overcoming obstacles, there's some truth to that, but there's constantly obstacles being placed in the way. And they're being placed in the way by government. Government is doing this, of course, in conjunction with some of these elite scumbags who realize that they're not the best at whatever they do. So they need to stop competition. So who do they get? They get the guys with guns, government. They get the guys with guns, the government, to create laws, to create policies that will benefit them, keep them in power, keep them rich, that will take money by force from the poor people and funnel it to them and their corporations, in the form of subsidies, bailouts, just all sorts of things. But that's how the system is rigged now, so that they're constantly placing obstacles if they see competition arising to try to suppress and quell any potential threats to their dominance. That's cronyism. That's not capitalism. So when people keep saying, oh, yes, this evil capitalist society, what they're talking about is cronyism. It's this evil cronyist system where government is picking winners and losers, acting at the behest of some, and at the expense of others. So what I mean is I want to destroy the class of the proletariat so that people are able to, and to make proletariat more of a stage than anything else. So that if you have somebody who's younger, coming into the job force for the first time, it's a stage. It's not a class. It's not something that at present people are doing, working for somebody else, making dollars for somebody else and pennies for themselves for 30, 40, 50 years. And then they retire and they hope to get a pension and they hope their Social Security check is good enough so that they can survive on. That's where we're at now. That's not the kind of system I'm advocating for creating and sustaining. I'm talking about a system where proletariat is a stage, and then it's an option for people. That's why I say it's not going to be, everybody's not going to be out of the proletariat, because some people are more comfortable working as an employee for others rather than being the boss themselves. Let's face it, I've had conversations with some people just don't want to be the boss. They don't want that responsibility. Some people like doing labor. To some people that's satisfying to them, it's fulfilling. But there are a large amount of people who don't like having to toil day in and day out while they're getting just barely scraping by, and somebody else is getting the wealth. And the answer for that is to give them the tools so that they can participate at the highest levels of a capitalist society. They can be bosses, they can be entrepreneurs, they can be employers rather than just employees. And people will talk about the minimum wage. That's not the answer, because all that is doing is sustaining people at the bottom rung of this class. That's sustaining the proletariat and making sure people are comfortable while they're in the proletariat, more comfortable rather than less comfortable, but still keeping them in the proletariat. One of the key ways I think destroying the proletariat can be accomplished and must be accomplished is education. Because right now our education system is not based on helping people achieve success. Our public education system is centered and focused on creating workers for the elite. That is the purpose of our educational system. That's why you have to start looking at public education as what it is. It is a problem because the government is not working for the benefit of our kids. The government is working for the benefit of their cronies. They're working hand in hand at multiple levels to create a society where there's only a few who have and the most don't have. Most of us have not. And there's many reasons, and I'll get into some of those reasons in later videos. But this is the problem that public schools present. 13 years, and I ran for mayor, and one of the things I wanted to do was upgrade the curriculums. And I said, it shouldn't take 13 years in public school for kids to graduate and become, and only be able to work at McDonald's or Dwayne Reed. That's ridiculous. Like, what are you doing for 13 years if the only thing a person can do afterwards is handle a cash register, stock some boxes, or do you want fries with that? That's ridiculous. That's just the complete and utter failure of the educational system. Actually, it's a complete and utter success of the education system if you realize its true purpose. It's a failure that it exists, but it's actually achieving its true purpose of creating workers, creating this large class of proletariat that will just be able to be a commodity of the rich and powerful. But my idea was economics, finance, business management, entrepreneurship, introduce those elements inside the public school curriculum. And not starting in high school, starting in elementary school. So at elementary school, in kindergarten, you can start teaching kids how to run a business. You can have kids running their own little, in fact, you'll see this frequently, the kids run their lemonade stand. Just a couple of weeks, I was here in Brooklyn, saw a couple of kids doing their thing on the corner of some lemonade. I bought it, definitely, because I said, keep doing this, keep that entrepreneurship, that attitude, that drive alive, where you are making money for yourself. You are your own boss. But we can start teaching kids from kindergarten. In fact, we can start teaching kids in home. But if kids aren't being taught in the homes, in the majority of homes, because majority of us don't have this approach to finance, to economics, don't have the knowledge set to teach our kids. So one of the things the system can do is undo the intentional indoctrination of our kids, and the intentional keeping them down, and suppression and oppression of people by teaching them and miseducating them. That's one of the things that I think needs to be done. And so that these kids can get out of school after 13 years. And hey, we may not even need all that time. In fact, we don't need all that time. It doesn't take that long. It really is wasting our kids' time and stopping them from being able to grow at a much faster pace. But we can make it so that when kids graduate from high school, they can be bosses, they can be business owners, they can be entrepreneurs, they can be executives, they can come straight out and do so much more with their lives. And some of them may want to be doctors. So some of them may want to go to college after that. Some of them may want to be lawyers. So they may want to go to law school after that. Some of them may want to be carpenters, plumbers, and trade schools. We can make trade schools available. But guess what? If they have if any of those things, if a person's a carpenter, a plumber, a doctor, a lawyer, and they have their own, they've been taught the basics of economics, entrepreneurship, running a business. They've been taught all these things. They can always couple that financial knowledge, that financial education, with whatever trade or discipline they study afterwards, and become a skilled businessman, a skilled entrepreneur. So instead of just being a carpenter working for some other company, A person can start their own carpentry company. A person can start their own plumbing company. A lawyer can start his own law firm and know all the things to manage and do this, So that is one of the keys, and one of the things I focus on in attacking this current status quo. And it's one of the reasons why I strongly disagree with those who lean to socialism, because they're not trying to destroy the proletariat. They speak about people making sure people have health care, people have food, housing, but their solution isn't empowering people to be able to provide these for themselves. Their solution isn't empowering people to own their own means of production. Their solution is to have this provided by some central agency. So in the case of social democrats, they want the government to provide this, where you still have a capitalist society. It's a mixed market economy, but the government is providing these for the vast majority of people. It's providing healthcare. It's providing. There's so many problems with that, and then you've got the ones that go full blown socialists and just want, this means of production, and they call it power to the people. Basically, everybody owning it, but that's nonsense, because we all know there's going to be an administrator, and what that means is nobody owns anything. It's a post-capitalist society. And the problem with that is, now you haven't gotten rid of the proletariat. You've expanded it. You've made us all the proletariat. In the socialism model, you've gotten rid of the bourgeoisie. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. In my model, you get rid of the proletariat, or you make it a very temporary class. In their model, you get rid of the bourgeoisie. You get rid of those at the top who own, which is nothing more than envy. It's like, well, that doesn't improve my life. Making those people poor doesn't make my life better. But this is the game that's being played with many, and many who are in politics, because at that point, guess who does become the most powerful people? The government, the administrators, the people that are truly own the means of production are the ones that become the ultimate authority. And these are people that will then have the power over whether we eat or not. That's a problem. If you think government is a problem now, when it's just, when you still can buy your own food, when you still can pay your own rent, have your own house. And to some of us, some individuals don't. So some people are living in government housing. But just take a look at that. Look at how much control the government then has over your life, and how powerless you become. And that's the key. You become powerless. You now exist completely at the whims of others. And it's not just the potential for corruption. The fact that such corruption is rampant and is so readily evidenced and observed right now should make us realize that that's a horrible decision. That's a horrible path to go down. And that's why I think it's necessary to destroy the proletariat as a class, so that individuals have the ability to own their own means of production. Individuals. So that now no one can tell you what you need to do or what they want you to do so that you can eat. No one can tell you what to do and force you to do something so that you can have a place to live, so that you can get health care. Because you own enough resources that you can take care of yourself, that you can take care of your family, and that you are in charge of your destiny and aren't existing at the whims and the will of somebody else. And so I do want to touch on a couple of things before I end this video. One of the things is, I had laid out my educational plan to someone. I was talking to a reporter last year while I was doing I was running for mayor, and I told her about my plan for teaching kids so that kids get out. They can be bosses and employees instead of just, sorry, bosses and employers instead of just workers and employees. And she's like, well, what will you get rid of? And I'm like, classes that are non-essential and classes that do not result in putting food in front of, in their mouths. You know what I'm saying? In terms of, there may be classes that are nice and make people feel good, and it's culture and it's art, and the fact is, if it doesn't have a practical application, there's no logical rational defense of keeping that in place of something that can measurably improve someone's life in the here and now. There's no defense for that. So, and that's what I said. And she's like, so what kind of jobs will they get? I said, they can start their own businesses. And if they decide to work for somebody else, they can start at executive positions instead of just, these low wage jobs where people are, living paycheck to paycheck. She looked me in the face and said, but who will do the minimum wage jobs? But who will do the minimum wage jobs? I'm a libertarian. People look at us as if we hate poor people. People look at us as if we want people to suffer. This was a liberal who looked me in the face and said, who will do the minimum wage jobs? That should wake people up. I mean, I wish it was on video. I wish it was on tape so that I can show it to people. And that's why I'm telling people right now. Because that is the mindset that exists within so many of these people that claim to care about the poor. They don't want you to be successful. They want you to survive at such a basic level that you can do the jobs they don't want to. They don't want us to be able to get to a higher level. They don't want us to be able to reach the pinnacles of success. They want us to stay in our place. They want a domestic class. If you take a look at New York, I was wondering, with all these, the real estate in New York is so high. I'm like, wow, if they're going to price out, all of the people that are, their nannies, their babysitters, their baristas, their janitors. They're going to price us out of New York. Then who's going to take care of them? And then that's when I realized that these affordable housing plans, which are creating just a percentage of affordable housing, all of this stuff is being done to make sure that there are enough of the working class, of the domestic class in New York to do the jobs for the rulers of New York. That's not acceptable to me, and it shouldn't be acceptable to you. And so there's more that needs to be done to truly make the proletariat nothing more than a temporary stage or something that somebody can choose to go to if they feel burnt out. They don't want to run a business for a while. They want to just make some money where they can just work for somebody else and not have to worry about the stress and the responsibility of actually running a business. But they will always have the option and have been provided a foundation, a knowledge base that they can do it. But there's another thing that happens when you expand those that run businesses, you expand the number of those that are owners, is that now the workers are in greater demand. Because if you've got 100 people, 10 are owners and 90 are workers, these 90 people are competing for the jobs. So it's there's a surplus for the people that are running the businesses, and they can basically set the wages. Whereas if you've got 90 people that own businesses and 10 that are workers, those 10 workers are highly sought after so that whatever business gets those 10 workers has that much more help and that much more ability to expand and get more done than the other businesses. So those workers have more power and can demand more because their demand is greater than their supply. And so that's why I think it's even having a proletariat stage is still much better than the current situation where there's just this mass of this overwhelmingly large domestic class that's at the mercy of the ruling class. But it's essential to attack this problem, I think, from a standpoint of raising those of us that are, at the bottom among the bottom of the class caste, as opposed to trying to bring other people down, because that does nothing to improve our lives or to help us truly be free and to live our lives more productively. But then I want to finish with that quote. And I'm going to pause for a second because I want to make sure I get the quote completely correct. Okay, I've got the quote. The person says, "You think all this can last? There's a storm coming, Mr. Wayne. You and your friends better batten down the hatches, because when it hits, you're all going to wonder how you ever thought you could live so large and leave so little for the rest of us." That's it for this episode. Thank you for joining me, and see you next time.